The word submission. In today's world, it feels heavy, controversial, triggering, outdated. For some, it sounds like oppression. For others, control. For many, it sounds unsafe. But what if we've misunderstood it? What if culture rejected something it never fully understood? And what if scripture never meant what people made it mean? Tonight, we're stepping into one of the most debated topics in Christian marriage. Not to argue, not to dominate, but to understand. 1. Modern marriage tension. A wife sits silently at the kitchen table. A husband stands, frustrated. She feels unheard. He feels disrespected. Both feel misunderstood. And somewhere between pride and pain, the word submission becomes a weapon. In modern culture, independence is strength. Equality is justice. Autonomy is identity. So when people hear Ephesians 5 verse 22, "Wives, submit yourselves to your own husbands as you do to the Lord," it sounds like regression. But the verse doesn't end there. 2. Scripture context. Ephesians 5 verse 25. "Husbands, love your wives, just as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her." Pause there. Gave himself up. That is not dominance. That is sacrifice. That is leadership through surrender. Biblical submission cannot be understood without biblical love. And biblical love is not control. It is self-giving. 3. What submission is not. Submission is not silence, fear, inferiority, abuse tolerance, loss of identity. The Bible never commands a wife to endure abuse. It never commands blind obedience. It never commands erasing herself. Submission in Scripture is voluntary alignment, not forced compliance. 4. The Greek meaning. The word translated submit comes from the Greek hopatasso. It means to arrange under, like soldiers aligning under a commander. But here's the powerful part. In verse 21, just before wives are addressed, Paul says, Ephesians 5 verse 21, "Submit to one another out of reverence for Christ." Mutual submission. The whole passage begins with humility for both. 5. Christ as the model. What does Christ's leadership look like? Philippians 2 verses 5 to 8. Jesus, being equal with God, made himself nothing, served, was obedient, even unto death. If a husband is called to lead like Christ, then leadership means serving first, protecting, sacrificing, listening, laying ego down. And if that is the leadership model, submission becomes trust, not fear. 6. Modern misuse. Unfortunately, history shows us what happens when Scripture is taken without Christ. Some men have used headship to control. Some churches have silenced women. Some marriages have justified harm in God's name. But abuse is not biblical leadership. Control is not Christ-like. Dominance is not divine. 7. The modern rejection. Because of misuse, many reject the concept entirely. But removing biblical structure doesn't eliminate power struggles. It often increases them. When no one takes responsibility for spiritual leadership, marriage becomes competition instead of covenant. 8. The balance. Healthy biblical marriage looks like a husband who says, "I will die to my ego before I harm you." A wife who says, "I trust your heart because you protect mine." That is not inequality. That is harmony. 9. Practical application today. In modern decisions, finances, parenting, career moves, ministry, relocation, submission does not mean the wife has no voice. In fact, a wise husband seeks her wisdom. Proverbs 31 verse 26. She speaks with wisdom, Leadership listens. And love never bulldozes. 10. Emotional safety. True submission can only exist in emotional safety. If there is fear, there is no biblical foundation. Because 1 John 4 verse 18. There is no fear in love. If fear dominates the marriage, something is broken. 11. Mutual honor. 1 Peter 3 verse 7. Husbands, treat them with respect. Respect is commanded. Honor is required. Submission and honor must coexist. Without honor, submission becomes oppression. Without love, leadership becomes tyranny. 12. The real issue. The real question isn't, should wives submit? The real question is, are husbands leading like Christ? Because Christ never led with ego. He led with nails in his hands. Restoration vision. Imagine a marriage where the husband protects peace. The wife strengthens vision. Both pray. Both surrender. Both honor. Both grow. That is biblical alignment. Not control. Not silence. Not superiority. But covenant unity. Submission is not weakness. It is strength under trust. Leadership is not power. It is responsibility under God. When modern culture and biblical truth collide, we don't abandon Scripture. We understand it deeper. Because God's design was never meant to harm. It was meant to protect. Subscribe to Relationship and Marriage 247. Where faith meets clarity, and truth protects love.